Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and we are reading the book of Deuteronomy. Yes, we're starting a new book in this week's Torah parashah cycle. This is the last book of the 5 books of the Torah. And this book seems like, and it is recapping all the other 4 books, but it's very direct, and this is my personal favorite book of all of the books of the Torah. All of the other books are important, but this book gives the direct word exactly what needs to be done and the consequences, what's going to happen if the people disobeyed. It starts off in this parashah, which is the 44th reading in this year's Torah cycle. Today we're going to be reading Deuteronomy 1:1 to 3:22. So get your Bibles out so we can start reading that. But again, this week we're going to see Moses recapping all of the recent events that happened of the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt, and they were going all the way through to try to get to the Jordan, to cross over the Jordan. A trip that certainly shouldn't have taken 40 years, but did. So we're going to see Moses, and we're going to start recapping this. We're going to start reading in chapter 1. And if you missed last week's Torah portion, you can go to my website, www.torahllife.tv, and you can check it out there. Alright, so Deuteronomy chapter 1:1 says, "These are the words which Moses spoke to Israel beyond the Jordan, in the wilderness in Arab, opposite Sopah, between Paran and Topel, and Laban and Hazra and Disabah." Now basically this is very close to the other side of the Jordan, because you can look at a map and find out exactly where these places are or were, but it's close to the other side of the Jordan. And it says 11 days from Herbeb by the way of Mount Seir to Kadesh Barnim. And Mount Herb is actually Mount Sinai, and Mount Seir is the Jordanian city of a rock called Petra, which is right on the other side of the Jordan, of where the children were crossing over to go in. So you have the children here 11 days from Mount Sinai. So it was only 11 days from a trip that's taken them 40 years. So the trip could have taken 11 days, but it took 40 years. Why? Because they wandered around the desert for 40 years. Because of their disobedience and because of their lack of faith, they stayed in the desert for 40 years when it should have only taken 11 days. And it came to pass in the 40th year, on the 11th month, on the 1st of the month, Moses spoke to all the sons of Israel according to all that Yahweh had commanded him concerning them. So it says Moses spoke all and to all. So he spoke to all of the children of Israel, and this includes the community with them, recapping and explaining to them what happened and what's going to happen when they go in. And he told them everything. He didn't leave nothing back. There was nothing hidden. And there's many other verses that say he wrote all of them down as well. He didn't just tell them, he wrote it down as well. Verse 4 says, after he had stricken Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and Og, the king of Bashan, who lived in Astro in Edrei, beyond the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses began to explain the law, saying, this law saying. Now, we already saw when he struck them down because they didn't let him pass through the land, or because they tried to have the children or the women of Moab mess with the children of Israel. We already discussed that. So now he begins to explain this law in verse 6. Our Creator Yahweh Elohim spoke to us in Horeb, and that's on Mount Sinai, saying, "You have enough of dwelling in this mountain. Turn and pull up stakes," which means to get ready to camp out, "and go into the hills of the Amorites, and to all its neighboring places in the Arab, in the hills, in the low country, and in the Negev, in the shore of the sea, the land of the Canaanites, and Lebanon, to the great river, the Euphrates river." And remember, the 11-day trip, this could have been when they left Mount Sinai, but it was much more than that. Verse 8, "Behold, I have given you the land. Go in and possess the land which Yahweh has sworn to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, to give them and their seed after them." And we see here him recapping what our Creator said in the covenant made to Abraham when he was in this land, this promised land, almost 400 years prior, 440 years or so prior, saying, your descendants will come into this land, and I promise this land to them. Verse 9, "And I spoke to you at the time, saying, I am not able to bear you by myself. Yahweh Elohim has multiplied you, and behold, today you are as the stars of the heaven, for multitude. May Yahweh the Elohim of your fathers add to you 1,000 times more than you are, and bless you as he has spoken to you. To be fruitful and multiply is a blessing, and this is what will happen if we are being obedient to his word. And how can I by myself bear the load of you and your burden and your strife? Well, that's what Moses was asking. In verse 13, give wise and understanding men and those known to your tribes, and I will appoint them rulers over you. And you answered me and said, the thing which you have spoken is good to you. So the children answered Moses, and they agreed with him. And verse 15, and I took the chiefs of your tribes, wise and noted men, and gave them to be rulers over you, captains over 1,000, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and officers for your tribes. And I commanded your judges at the time, saying, hear between your brothers, and judge with righteousness between a man and his brother and his alien. So a man and brother or foreigners, you are to judge with rightnesses. Now many people will say we shouldn't be judging, or there's no judgment in the scriptures. No, there's judgment with righteousness. Judgment to lift people up, not tear them down. Of course, that's different in today's world and today's society, but that's what we had with the scriptures here. Verse 17, you shall not recognize persons in judgment. You shall hear the small as well as the great. You shall not be afraid because of the face of a man, or for judgment in Elohim. And to think too hard for you, you shall bring near to me, and I shall hear it. Now, going back, this is what the father-in-law said of Moses. We remember Jethro was with Moses and saw Moses taking on all day long, taking on all these cases. But his father-in-law said, this is not a good thing. Just let them bring the serious cases that they can't figure out to you. You've given them the word and how to rectify things. So let these appointed judges judge all the cases that they could handle to take the burden off Moses. Verse 18, and at the time I commanded you all the things which you were to do, and we pulled up stakes from Horeb, and went through all that great and fearful wilderness which you have seen, the way of the hills of the Amorites, as Yahweh our Elohim commanded us. And we came into Kadesh Barnea. And I said to you, you have come into the hills of the Amorites, which Yahweh Elohim has given to us. See, Yahweh Elohim has given the land before you. Go up and possess it, as Yahweh the Elohim of your fathers has spoken to you. Do not fear or be afraid. Do not fear or be afraid was one of the commands. He said, Yahweh has given you this land. Do not fear or be afraid. So the land was already promised to them. And this wasn't only the land on the promised land on the other side of the Jordan that they were heading to. This was the land on they passed through the desert getting there. These were given to them. Do not be afraid. And you came near to me, every one of you, and said, let us send man before us, and they shall search out the land, and they shall bring us back word as to the way in which we shall go, and the cities which we shall come. Well, this was one of the problems, that it's okay to go to search out the land or to try to find the best path. But remember, they were being led by Yahweh, by the cloud, so they had to follow the cloud. They shouldn't have decided to go on their own and leave Yahweh's way of how to get there. And the thing was good in my eyes. Moses said it was good in his eyes. And I took 12 men of you, 1 man from each tribe. And remember, this is recapping what we've already discussed with the spies that went in and they came back with a false report. This is what's so great about the book of Deuteronomy. It's telling it again in such a clear and direct way, without all of the towns, the cities, and all of the minute details. It's getting right to the point of what happened and why they suffered the consequences and so on. So it says in verse 24, and they turned and went up to the hills and came into the valley of Eshcol and searched it. And they took of the fruit of the land with their hands and brought it down to us, and brought us back word and said, the land which Yahweh Elohim has given us is good. And you were not willing to go up. You rebelled against the mouth of Yahweh your Elohim. And even though they were living in strife and complaining against Moses prior to this, that was the big thing. They were just not willing to go what he said to do. And now they murmured in their tents, and they said, because Yahweh hates us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to give us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us. Where shall we go up? Our brothers have melted our hearts, saying, we have seen there a people greater and taller than we, cities great, upwalled in the heavens, and also the sons of Anak. And I said to you, do not be terrified or be afraid of them. So the children, this was again the false report of the spies, and the children were upset. They had a lack of faith in Yah. And Yahweh Elohim, who goes before you, shall fight for you according to all he did for you in Egypt before your eyes. And this is Moses telling the children, don't be afraid. Yahweh will take care of us, and he'll fight for us, just like he got us out of Egypt. And if he could do that, he can help us defeat the people in the promised land, and we could take over. And in the wilderness, where you have seen how Yahweh your Elohim has bore you as man bears his son, in all the way which you have gone until the days have come to this place. Yet in this thing you are not believing in Yahweh your Elohim, who went before you the way to seek out a place for your camping, and by fire by night, to show you the way in which you should go in a cloud by the day. And Yahweh heard the sound of your words, and was angry, and swore, saying. So this is the final breaking point after all the murmuring and everything else. It says, not one of these men of this evil generation shall see the good land which I have sworn to give your fathers. So this is the generation that he called an evil generation, that he actually brought out of the land of Egypt. And evil, it's very interesting he used the word evil, because this is the people that he said was his own people when they were faithful to him. But why did he call them evil? Because they had a lack of faith, because they had a lack of trust in his word, and because they were fearful when he told them not to be fearful. So this disobedient people he called evil. So being disobedient is an evil thing according to our creators. And he said, not one of these men of this evil generation shall go into the land which I have sworn to give your fathers, except Caleb the son of Jonapah. He shall see it, and I shall give the land on which he has walked to him, and to his sons, because he has followed fully Yahweh. Because he fully followed him, he wasn't disobedient. And Yahweh was angry with me for your sake, saying, also you shall not go in there. So this was Moses saying, not even shall I go in there, because he said for your sake, but it wasn't only for their sake, it was for his disobedience as well. Joshua the son of Nun, who stands before you, he shall go in there, and you shall strengthen him, for he shall cause Israel to inherit. So Joshua and Caleb were the only ones that were going to go into the land of the generation. And your infants whom you said, they are prey, and your sons whom today have no knowledge of good or evil, they shall go in there, and I will show it and give it to them, and they shall possess it. So we look here, and there's some good notes here. It says, number one note says, this shows the consequence of our decisions, and even Moses, a great man of Elohim, lost out on the promised land due to this grave mistake. That's one of the notes here. And it also says, this shows the children are teachable when they are young, before many get older and develop a hardened heart. So we're going to verse 40 here. Verse 40 in chapter 1 of Deuteronomy says, and you turn yourselves and pull up stakes towards the wilderness in the way of the sea of reeds. And you have answered and said to me, we have sinned against Yahweh. We shall go up and we shall fight according to all which Yahweh our Elohim has commanded us. And you each one girded his weapons for war, and you thought it easy to go up in the hill country. And Yahweh said to me, say to them, you shall not go up nor fight, for I am not in your midst, lest you be struck before your enemies. So Yahweh was telling them not to go, but they already made the decision they were going, and they weren't listening. And I spoke to you, and you did not listen, and rebelled against the mouth of Yahweh, and acted proudly, and went up into the hills. And the Amorites who lived in the country came out to meet you, and they chased you, and as the bees do, and struck you in Seirah to Hermon. And you returned and wept before Yahweh, but Yahweh did not listen to your voice, nor did he give ear to you. And you lived many days in Kadesh, according to the days that you remained there. Again, this trip took much longer than it had to take, because they were disobedient. And even though they cried and he answered their cries, he had to teach them. And, sometimes, folks, we have to learn the hard way. And this is what was happening here to the children. Now we're going to go to chapter 2 of Deuteronomy, this last book of the Torah. And we can see Moses recapping what had happened. And Caleb and Joshua were the only ones from the generation of the children of a certain age that left Egypt, that were going to be going into the promised land. And chapter 2. And when we turned and pulled up stakes in the wilderness, the way of the Red Sea, and Yahweh had spoken to me, and we went around the mountain of Seir many days, And Yahweh spoke to me, saying, You have gone around the mountain long enough. Turn yourselves northward. And commanded the people, saying, You are passing over into the border of your brothers, and the sons of Esau, who live in Seir, and they shall be afraid of you, and you shall be on guard very much. You shall not fight against them, for I will not give their land to you, even to a step of a sole of a foot, for I have given Mount Seir to Esau as a possession. You shall buy food from them with silver, and you shall eat, and you shall buy water from them with silver, and you shall drink. For Yahweh Elohim has blessed you with all the work of your hands. He has known your walking through this great wilderness. Yahweh Elohim has been with you these 40 years, and you have lacked nothing. So for 40 years, not even the sole of their shoes got a hole in it. For 40 years, their clothes provided were fine for 40 years, and all their shelter and their food was supplied for 40 years. They lacked nothing. And they still complained because of their disobedient, selfish hearts. And verse 8 says, And we passed out on from our brothers, the sons of Esau, thus living in Seir by the way of the Abram, by Elith, by Esgon Geber, we turned and passed on by the way of the wilderness of Moab. And in this note here, it says verses 1 to 8 clearly show the Israelites were on the east side of the Jordan at this time, where Mount Sinai was located in Jabal El Lawz in Saudi Arabia. And there's a reference note here of Galatians 4:25. And Yahweh said to me, verse 9 now, Yahweh said to me, Do not besiege Moab, nor stir yourself up against them in battle, for I will not give their land to you for a possession, for I have given Ar as a possession to the sons of Lot. The Emim lived there in days gone by, a great and plainful people, and tall as the Anakim. And they are reckoned to be giants, they too like Anakim, but the Moabites call them Emim. And the Horites lived in Seir before, and the sons of Esau dispossessed them and destroyed them from before them, and lived there in a place as Israel has done to the land of his possession, which Yahweh has given to them. Now rise up, and you yourselves pass over Tyrant Zarid, and we crossed over Tyrant Zarid. And the days in which we came from Kadesh Barnea until we had crossed over Tyrant Zarid were 38 years, until the end of all the generation. Even the men of war were destroyed from the midst of the camp, as Yahweh had swore to them. And the hand of Yahweh was also against them to destroy them from the midst of the camp until they were consumed. And it happened, when all the men of war had finished dying among the people, Yahweh spoke to me, and saying, You are passing over the border of Moab today to Ar, and you shall draw near across from the sons of Amorah to. You shall not besiege them, nor be stirred up against them. For I have not given the land of the sons of Amorite to you for a possession, for I have given it to a possession for the sons of Lot. It is reckoned by the land of the giants, even it. Giants formerly lived in it, and the Amorites calling them Zemzumim, a great and plainful people, and tall as the Anakim. And Yahweh destroyed them before them, and they expelled them, and lived in their place. And as he has done for the sons of Esau who live in Zoar, when he has destroyed the Horites from before them, and they expelled them and lived in the place until today. And the Avrim who live in the villages as far as Azor, the Capatorites come out of Captor, destroyed them and lived in their place. Rise up, pull up stakes, and cross over the Arnon River, as I have given Sholin, the king of Heshbon, the Amorite, in his land into your hand. Begin to possess and stir yourselves up against him in battle. Today I will begin to put your dread and your fear on the face of the people under the heavens, of all the heavens, who will hear your fame and will tremble and at wrath because of you. And I sent messages from the wilderness of Kermath to Shannon, the king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, Let me pass on the highway through your land. I will go on the highway, I will not turn aside to the right or to the left. You shall sell me food for silver, and I shall eat. And you shall give me water for silver, and I will drink. Only let me pass through on my feet. As the sons of Esau who lived in the Seir, and the Moabites who lived in Ar, had done to me, until I have crossed over the Jordan to the land in which Yahweh our Elohim is giving to us. And Sharnan, the king of Heshbon, was not willing to let us pass by him. For Yahweh your Elohim had hardened his spirit, and had emboldened his heart, so to give him into your hand, as it is to this day. And remember, folks, this is not something we're hearing for the first time. We just read this in the book of Numbers, and we're recapping it here. Or Moses is recapping, telling all of Israel what happened, so they don't get a misunderstanding what happened, and they understand exactly why what's happening happened and what they're supposed to do. It's actually given the meaning behind the story, but first he's recapping the story. Verse 31 of chapter 2. And Yahweh said to me, Behold, I have begun to give Sihon and his land before you. Begin to possess in order to possess his land. And Sihon came out to meet us, he and all his people, to battle at Jahaz. And Yahweh Elohim delivered him before us, and we struck him and his sons and all his people. And we captured all his cities at that time, and utterly destroyed every city, man, women, and little ones. We did not leave a remnant. Only we plundered the cattle for ourselves, and we took the plunder of the cities. From Ararah, which is by the edge of the Aran River, to the city beside the river, even to Galeed, there was not a city which was too high for us. Yahweh Elohim delivered all before us. Only you did not come near to the land of the sons of Ammon, any part of the Jabbok River, the cities of the hills of the country, and all which Yahweh our Elohim has forbidden us. Now we're going to get up here to chapter 3, and we're only reading 22 verses of this chapter for this week's Torah portion. But again, read this more than once each week, and then on Shabbat you could discuss it with your home fellowship or your group, which it would be great to get a better understanding of this. Because when you have an understanding of the history of the children of Israel, you're going to have a wonderful understanding of Yeshua Messiah, what he wanted you to do and how he wants you to live. And even more important, or just as important, you're going to have a great understanding of the words of the Apostle Paul, which so many people misunderstand because they don't have this history that Moses has given the children right now. Chapter 3. And we turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, came out to meet us, as he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And it says here, the note, Bashan, the area east of the Sea of Galilee, commonly known as the Golden Heights, which was allotted to the tribe of Manasseh. And Yahweh said to me, Do not fear him, for I have given him into your hand, and all the people and his land. And you shall do to him as you have done to Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon. And Yahweh our Elohim also gave Og, the king of Bashan, into our hands and all his people, and we struck him until not one survivor was left to him. And we captured all his cities at the time. There was not being a city which we did not take from them, 60 cities, all in the region of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All the cities were fortified with high walls, gates, with bars, and with double-leveled doors, besides a great many of the unwalled towers. And we utterly destroyed them, as we had done to Sihon, the king of Heshbon, destroying every city, the men, the women, and the little ones. And we plundered for ourselves all the livestock and the plunder of the cities. And we took the land that was beyond the Jordan, from the valley of Arnon to Mount Hermon, out of the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites. Now, this is like a pep talk almost for the children that were going into Israel, or the promised land, of to be encouraged, regardless of what's happening, regardless of how it doesn't seem like they're the favorite, where they're the actual underdog. Look what we have already done, he's saying. We've already done this, and because Yah has blessed us, and we could do it all. And we go here in verse 9. The Sidonians called Haram Saram, and the Ammonites called it Sirna. And all the cities of the plain, and all the Gilead, and all Bashan, to Seklah and Eridi, cities of the kingdom of Og in Bashan. For only the king of Bashan remained of the rest of the giants. Behold, his bedside was a bedstand of iron. Is it not in Rehoboth the son of Ammon 9 cubits long and 4 cubits broad by the cubit of a man? Now, just to give you an idea how big these giants was, this was truly a king-size bed. This was the cubics, I believe, it's just a really tremendous bed here. Anything we could imagine. So these people were like 9 to 12 feet tall. And you can imagine how big the bed was, and you got the exact measurements there. As we possessed this land at the time, from Arah by the valley of Arnon, and half of the hill country of Gilad and its cities, I gave to the Reubenites and to the Gadonites. And the rest of Galilee and to all Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half tribe of Manasseh, all the region of Argob, to all Bashan, that is called the land of the giants. Jair, the son of Manasseh, took all the region of Garbab, to the border of the Gershonites, and to the Mathonites, and called them, even Bashan, after his own name, towns of Jair, until today. And I gave Galilee to Machir, and to the Reubenites, and to the Gadonites I gave from Galilee all, even to the valley of Aaron, the middle of the valley and its border, even to the Jobak River, which is the border of the sons of Ammon. Now, this is important, folks, because the children didn't take the land. It says he gave. So our Creator gave the land. It's a big difference because he is the ultimate owner of the land, and who he says it should be, it's theirs. It's not up to us to decide. And that's what we need to understand. That's a big problem we have today. We decide, or we use money to buy something. No, he's ultimately in control, regardless of how much money we purchase land for, whatever. He decides who should be in the land, and he tells them if the people are obedient, he blessed them. So it says in verse 17, and the Arabah, the Jordan, and its borders from Sinrath even to the sea of Arbeb, the sea, salt sea under the slopes of Pisgah eastward. Now, none of these places are named the same thing today, pretty much. To get a good understanding of where they are, just look up a biblical map at this time, and you'll get a good understanding. And they even have wonderful maps comparing them to the land today, so you could see exactly where that land is today. Verse 18, and I commanded you at the time, saying, Yahweh your Elohim has given to you this land to possess it, and you shall pass over armed before your brothers, the sons of Israel, all the warriors. Now remember, you had 2.5 tribes wanting to stay on the other side of the Jordan, asking for that land for their cattle. And they promised that only their children and their wives and their cattle will stay behind, but they'll go and fight for their children in Israel. And this is what we read a couple of Torah portions ago. And Moses at first was very angry, but then when they said that they will go and fight and won't come back until everything has been accomplished, then he allowed them to. Verse 18, and I commanded you at the time, saying, Yahweh your Elohim has given you this land to possess it, and you shall pass by over the armed before your brother, the son of Israel, all the warriors. Only your wives and your little ones, and your livestock shall dwell in your cities which I have given to you. I know that you have much livestock. It shall be until Yahweh shall give rest to your brothers like yourselves, and they too have possessed the land which Yahweh Elohim has given them beyond the Jordan. Then you shall each man return to his possession as I have given to you. And we recently just discussed this, and they're going past the Jordan with all the children, leaving their wives behind, and only when the other children are at peace and have their land can they come back. Verse 21. And I at the time commanded Joshua, saying, your eyes have seen all that Yahweh your Elohim has done to those 2 kings. So Yahweh shall do all to the kingdoms to which you are passing over. So now Joshua has the instructions. When you go in, the same thing is going to happen, but you need to be obedient. And this was the final instructions of this year's Torah portion given to Joshua. It says, do not fear them, for Yahweh your Elohim, he shall fight for you. So this is the instructions that Joshua had when he was going into the land. And how could you, when you hear those instructions, have any fear of what you're about to face? Well, that's the same thing Yahweh gives us, that courage and that to be brave, because he is with us if we remain faithful to his instructions and his guidelines. Now, if we get away from his instructions and guidelines, there's going to be a lot of fear in our heart. And how do you know? Well, fear is a great measure of what we're doing and how obedient we're being or not being. And that is the end of this Torah portion, and we're going to be reading next Shabbat Torah portion number 45, which is going to be Deuteronomy 3:23 to 7:11. So if you have any questions or comment about this week's Torah portion, please post them below the video, And also read when you're done with this Shabbat. Start reading next ones. And when you see this video and also on Shabbat, you'll be ready. You understand what it says. You don't want the first time you're reading this to be when you're at a study. You want to have a good understanding so you can ask those questions that you don't understand yet. So that's this week's Shabbat. I want to wish everybody a blessed Shabbat Shalom and this Shabbat or this coming Shabbat. And until then, everybody, Shalom Shalom.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah Life Ministries, come out of the world.